Hello, everybody. This is Brian Thompson from Delphi Bracketology. We're talking brackets today, and we're going to talk about our brackets that we have. Daniel, can we hear you? Let me say something, Daniel. Hey, Daniel, I can't hear you all of a sudden. Nice job for me kicking you out. Can't hear you. So we'll get that fixed, and let's start this over. I'm going to pause the recording. Is here with our junior. Is a junior at Delphi in our Delphi Bracketology Club. Say hello, Daniel.
Hello.
And we're here tonight, and we're going to be joined maybe by some other members of our group. Here's one calling in right now. Jesse Scowden is a junior, also at Delphi Bracketology. Hi, Jesse. How you doing? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
All right, we can hear you perfectly, too. Thanks for joining us tonight. Well, we are our school club, and as a lot of our listeners have already heard before, we tried to predict the bracket based on the criteria the NCAA committee was supposed to use, and we put in our bracket this weekend at 4:21 after lots of text messages and conversations and meetings, and we gave it to a place called bracketmatrix.com where they judge, and somehow we came out on top of 143 brackets at 351 points. And guys, if you would just talk a little bit about when we kind of figured out we were doing well Sunday during the selection show, and then today when we got the news that we were officially number one in the whole country. Don't tell our listeners kind of what you're thinking or what you were thinking here the last couple days. Go ahead, Daniel. We'll start with you.
It's just exciting. I don't think that we really thought that we would be number one overall, but we felt like we had a chance that we could be pretty solid. And when we saw that we had the whole first 20 teams correct, I think that really helped us getting going. And it's exciting. It's fun to be able to say that you were first out of 143 brackets. So
yeah.
It's exciting.
Jesse, what have you thought about this process? You joined our group about 4 weeks ago. We had B-dubs and a couple meetings at our house and so forth. What's it feel like to be a part of this and then see that we scored 351 points and we're number one in the nation? What are your thoughts?
Wow, that's all I got to say. I'm glad you guys invited me. It's been an awesome time. And when I first saw that we got like the first part of the bracket right, I was really excited.
Yeah, and for our listeners, I wish we would have had the video cam, the 360 camera we use at our school in our meeting. As the selections were coming out on CBS, one after another in the South region, we were correct. And Dave Gilbert, our other social studies teacher, said, hey, number 14 needs to be Buffalo, and it was absolutely Buffalo, number 14, and I think they could hear us in Lafayette. So we got off to a good start, and then the other brackets were pretty good as well. And we added it up, 2 or 3 times out of disbelief that we didn't think that we had that. So I'm going to go to Daniel and then Jesse with this question. As students, when you were brought into the process, what's the most interesting or difficult thing about trying to seed these teams on lines 1 through 16? Daniel.
I think it's just trying to compare them all. There are so many numbers and so many different things that you could use to compare and contrast these teams. It's hard to find one common denominator that really separates one another, whether that be top 50 wins or strength of schedule or bad losses for that matter. It all plays into how they.
Yeah, you're cutting out just a little bit there, Daniel. We're going to go
really hard to try to compare.
Yeah, Jesse, what have you thought here while we tried to put these teams together? What has been working and what's been difficult for you?
Like Daniel said, like all of the teams are so similar in the body of work that they have, and it was just fun to like get into the nitty gritty and actually figure out like what each team did and how they got the seed that they got.
Yeah, and for me, the question was when teams were very similar, it got really difficult on what set of criteria to use. Were we going to use top 50 wins or were we going to use bad losses? And it seemed like the strength of one team was the weakness of another, and it put you right back at at a place where it was even. We've watched ESPN and CBS, and you hear coaches like Calipari at Kentucky, and everyone. We've heard a lot of complaints about the seating, and I think the committee was pretty good. I think they had some issues that I don't agree with, but Daniel, where would you say the committee messed up? According to, not that we're experts, but that we really thought the committee made some big mistakes.
One team that I really am still struggling to comprehend how they got in was Tulsa. Came in as the last team in the tournament. They had, there's always a reason and a reason not to be in, but I'm still struggling to kind of figure out how they got in. They may Monmouth, they did what the committee asked, and they went out and scheduled teams, and they may not have turned out to be the teams that they thought they were when they scheduled them in the off season, but it's just Tulsa, they're part of the American, and Monmouth, who's part of the MAAC. They have problems trying to schedule those top teams. And so I don't think that you can really blame them for going out and playing 23 games on the road and winning 20 of them. Some crazy stat line like that. I just don't understand how they could put Tulsa in.
Yeah, and Jesse, looking at the committee, what kind of things do you think the committee got wrong compared to ours? Just what do you think they got wrong?
To be honest, I think that St. Bonaventure missed it. I think they should have been in, but going by what they did, I could see why they missed. I think that Syracuse should have been in a play-in game. I don't think they should have been a 10 seed. Mm-hmm. That's the only thing I really have a problem with.
Yeah, I like St. Bonaventure. I like some of the mid-majors getting in. I would have liked to seen Valpo get in. But using the criteria, that's the thing. I had a conversation with our guidance counselor who was upset about IU's positioning and seeding. And I said, when you look at the criteria that the committee used, they did a pretty decent job. And it's usually the top 50, top 100 wins. And then it's strength of schedule and bad losses. It's not Ken Palm. It's not the ranking in the AP or the coaches poll, and a lot of people, I think, and what surprises me is the television analysts don't know that. And when you dig deep like we did, you kind of get where Indiana is a 5 seed. I had tweeted to a buddy of mine, hey, I think we have IU as a 4, but don't be surprised if they're a 5. And it makes sense. And then what other people don't understand is where people play at. It's geography. It is closest. And so I think the committee, you guys hit on the two biggest things, Syracuse and Tulsa, and leaving out St. Bonaventure and Monmouth. I think that to me, the problem I have with the committee is some of the places for the number 1s and number 2s, and maybe they moved Kansas to the south just to try to balance out some of the brackets. That is an option for them, but that was even a little more difficult to understand the way they did that. I think Michigan State and IU need to schedule better because their strength of schedules are those 4. There are 5 teams in the top 20 that have really bad strength or the lowest strength of schedules in the top 20. 4 of the 5 were Big Ten teams, and so every Big Ten team that's a 1 through 5 seed had a low schedule compared to everybody else. So that was interesting a little bit. Which let's ask you, Daniel, about the process a little bit more. Tell the listeners how we got to Oregon as the number 1, and our number 1's Virginia and Oregon. Some people put Oregon with Michigan State, but explain a little bit about why Oregon and not Michigan State.
I think the biggest factor for us was RPI top 100 wins. Coming in, Oregon had 20 wins against the top 100 in RPI compared to 4 losses, to whereas Michigan State, I believe, was 13 of 15 or 14 of 15 against the top 100 RPI. And you just can't compare those teams. Oregon, 4 games against the top 100. That's outstanding. They went out and scheduled, and they did the things that the committee asked, and they were rewarded with the 1 seed. And there's not really an argument for that. Yes, Michigan State won the Big Ten conference tournament, but they only won 14 or 13 games against the top 100 compared to Oregon's 20. You can't really make an argument for that.
No, that was the key for Oregon getting in over Michigan State. Jesse, look at the number 1s and 2 lines, and some people may not understand why we had the teams we did. What is your analysis of the 1s and the 2s?
I think we did a pretty good job with it. By looking at strength of schedule, I think that also plays a big factor in why we scheduled the 1s and 2s. Mm-hmm. Also, the top 50, like Daniel said, that played a big factor in it as well.
Yeah, and some people are complaining about the top 50. What's the difference between 48 and 52? And I get that, but every year there's a complaint about the seeding and that. And I really think the only complaint you have is the last 2 teams in, 2-3 teams that you missed, or that any bracketologist thinks you missed on. And really, let's talk bubble right now. We had like 20 teams for 10 spots all the way up through Saturday night. And for our listeners, the process, we met Thursday, and we went over the bracket for 4 hours. I had to kick these guys out of the house about 11 o'clock. They didn't want to leave. They did a lot of hard work. We threw questions out, watched games, threw questions out. And then when we left, there were still about 20 teams for about 10 spots, depending on these conference tournaments. And when you have that many, it can be really confusing. And then, the 3 of us were down at the Big Ten tournament on Friday, so we took a day's vacation and got a day away from it, and then we went back to work Friday night, and we were texting each other back and forth Saturday and Sunday, and didn't get done till 4:21. But when you look at those bubble teams, it's really hard to compare. And one of our last discussions as our group was whether we should put Syracuse in. None of us wanted to put Syracuse in. They did have 5 wins, and we said it's kind of hard to not put those 5 wins in. The RPI is so low, and we just said no, and we missed that one. But talk a little bit about some other bubble teams that got in. And we've talked about playing games and that, but talk about the process on the bubble and how you tried to make suggestions. Each of you tried to make suggestions. We'll start with Jesse on this one. Bubble teams, what were you looking at? What are some of the things that were a little bit tough or easy for you to pick?
Well, the fact that Monmouth had only 2, or I think it was 1 or 2 top 50 wins, that was a question mark for all of us. We didn't know if we should put them in or not, but most of us had them in. Mm-hmm. Same goes with South Carolina. They only had, I believe, was it 1?
1, yeah.
Yeah. That was the big question. The top 50 wins. I know I looked at that pretty hard, and we all did. And yeah, that's pretty much how it was.
That's interesting. South Carolina came from about a 6 or 7 seed to nowhere. If you look at our webpage at delphibracketology.weebly.com, you'll see our weekly updates. We deleted a few in January, but from February, South Carolina was solidly in. That's a good point, Jesse. And then, but they didn't win. You got to schedule and you got to win. And if you have a strength of schedule 260 non-conference and 140 or something in overall, you're just not going to get in. And this is something the Big Ten has got to do a better job of doing. Because we're in Big Ten country, but we've got to do a better job of that. Again, some bubble teams, Daniel. What do you think about some bubble teams?
Well, like Jesse mentioned, Monmouth, they were 2-2 against the top 50, but they had 3 losses to 200 plus RPI teams, and I would try to make my arguments for them, but those 3 losses just kept coming back and haunting them, and you couldn't really make an argument for them because of those losses. 2 losses, notably, were to Army and Canisius, and those are just 2 teams you can't lose to. Yeah. I was listening to a podcast the other day, or maybe it was on TV, but maybe you take one of the Power 5 conferences teams and put them in that situation to where they can't go out and schedule these bigger teams. They'll more than likely at least lose one, maybe 2 games to those 200 plus teams. And so I think it just goes back.
Yeah, and for our viewers, yeah, Daniel, your internet signal's kind of cutting in and out, so we'll come back to you here in a second. And those of you who might not see, if you don't see Daniel's picture, we do an audio podcast for Student Union Sports, so we're just continuing instead of kicking him out of the broadcast. We're just trying to keep him going as long as his audio can be. We have had about a month's worth of technical difficulties in the area here at Delphi with our internet provider, so we're just trying to go with that. We'll bring Daniel back in. Let's talk a little bit about lessons that we can learn. What did we learn from this process that we might take with us next year? Jesse, what have you learned that maybe we need to do a better job? And we did a really good job, but we always want to try to learn something. What can we do better next year?
Learn how teams strength of schedule non-conference. We can learn from that. That hurt Indiana, for example. I think that's why we got a 5 seed. But also, it changes every year, like criteria-wise. They'll never tell us probably. But from now on, I can see the committee going with top 50 wins, because if you schedule good, you're going to get in.
Right. And Daniel, are you with us there, bud?
Yeah.
Okay. What lessons should we learn from this year's bracketing process?
Well, the past 2 years, we've discounted that had a couple more RPI wins than some of the mid-major teams, and we didn't have those 2 teams in, so maybe next year we should have it in. But there's not really much else to look at. I mean, we should probably try to stick to the same criteria that we maybe had this year. Try to look at top 50 wins, strength of schedule, losses. I think that's one thing that we did differently this year, is that we really looked at who they lost to. Just looking at wins. I think we really dug into their schedules more, and we tried to really get as much in-depth information as we possibly could.
Yeah, and the hard thing too, the thing that I've learned is to try to distance yourself as a fan. Jesse and I are Indiana fans, and you want to kind of have them be a top seed, but you've got to kind of fight that urge to look a little more highly at the teams that you root for and our Indiana teams. The other lesson is not to put so much weight on the conference tournament. We did that last year. We made some last-second changes, and it come back to bite us. We actually had Texas A&M at 3 and Kentucky at 4, and Kentucky wins, and we automatically just flip-flopped them based on one game in March as opposed to 33 games throughout the whole season. And you look at it, Texas A&M had 18 wins against 13 or 15 and really had more top 50 wins. And whether you like the top 50 wins or not, that's a major criteria piece. And so that explains why, that happened. And we missed that. I think we also missed, like I said, the IU stuff was huge because we had them at 4. And really, when you look, Duke and Iowa State had better resumes according to the criteria. And one thing, I've learned that, but I would really, I don't know. The committee does a good job. I think it's not really an easy job. The Tulsa thing just sticks with me a little bit, and they just came out of nowhere. And I know UCLA came out of nowhere, but after last year, we looked at UCLA, and you could say they were even with the teams we were considering. I don't think Tulsa. I know they had 8 top. I guess they had 8 top 100 wins. But the schedule and the way they played down the stretch, and it's hard to use the eye test. I don't know what the eye test means that they use. So, looking at that, let's go to the actual tournament, and just quickly, we seeded them ahead of time, and we were cheering and screaming for all of that stuff. But now they've been bracketed, and now it comes down to the games. And let's just do a quick look at either some teams you're going to watch or some winners, the Final Four picks, or anything that you want to. Daniel, let's start with you.
Some teams that I think that we could watch are just the Pac-12 teams. There's 3 packed together in the South region: California, Colorado, and I'm trying to find the other one, Arizona. But I mean, they worked the RPI this year. Oregon, the 1 seed in the West, they had 20 wins against the top 100 in RPI. So they're just trying not to get to the point where, yeah, they have these good resumes, but they don't produce in the tournament. And just like Villanova, I don't think that they've gotten to the Sweet 16 in 2 years. Mm-hmm. So maybe they're trying to advance to that point for the first time in a while.
And Jesse?
Rather than get up.
Like Brent said, I like the 12-5 matchups this year. There's some interesting ones, and I could see Baylor getting upset by Yale.
Yeah. 12-5, and interesting because Indiana's at a 5. We don't want that one to be a 12-5 upset, and then a lot of our listeners are Purdue fans. They don't want that 12-5 upset. So let's go with Maryland or Baylor, right? I think Baylor's a 5 in there. Let's call that. I'm interested in South Dakota State, Maryland. Maryland hasn't really played up to their capabilities. Can they find it? I know they played well against Michigan State. So to answer Brent's question down there, and thanks for the question, Brent. We would have you call in, except we're the internet issue. We want to make sure these guys we don't mess up the internet. So thanks for understanding that. That's my son who's upstairs listening, by the way. Always good to have you on the show. But let's talk why 12-5 upsets happen. Never knew it. We put the bracket together for 25 years. The 12 seeds are generally your best small conference schools. When 32 teams get automatic bids for winning conferences. There's like 14 or 15 top teams. You have the Power 6 schools, and then you have the A10. You have Wichita State, some of those schools. But we're talking about Chattanooga. We're talking about Yale. We're talking about South Dakota State. The reason 12-5 happens, these teams go 26-5 in their conference. They're good teams. They just haven't played the big teams. And if you catch fire one day and the big team takes you for granted, you're going to get beat at the 12-5. And I really think the 5s think they're really good, and they get surprised by the 12s. So that's an interesting. Any other matchups you see at 4-13, 6-11 that upsets come from? Jesse, we'll go back to you, and then we'll go to Dave. Do you see any upsets in that in those range at a quick glance?
I can see Gonzaga taking on Seton Hall, but Seton Hall has been playing very well down the stretch, so I don't know if I could see it, but that's the one that jumps out at me.
And Daniel, big seed, that 6-11 or something.
One team that I think that I could see possibly losing is West Virginia. Stephen F. Austin, their head coach, is a disciple from Bob Huggins. They run the same type of defense. They get up in you. They force a lot of turnovers. This may be Stephen F. Austin's best team yet the past 3 years in making the NCAA tournament. And
Daniel, haven't they been close before too? Like close to pulling off upsets?
Yeah. I think their first year possibly they did pull off an upset, but it's not coming to mind. But catch West Virginia on a bad shooting night, it could be havoc for them.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of talk about a 13 seed Hawaii beating number 4 California. That's another top seed to look at. I'd like to see Stony Brook 13 beat Kentucky, but I just don't like Kentucky. Sorry for any of you Wildcat fans listening. And we have a question from our football coach, one of the best guys around, great coach. Thanks for listening. Here, his question is, who is the first top seed out of the tourney? I will start with Jesse. Who do you think the first one? We'll even go 1 or 2 seed. And just pick one of those that might be the first top seed out.
I would say probably. I'd say Xavier. I could see if Iowa catches fire. I know they haven't been playing well, but I could see an Iowa team sneaking up and getting that.
Yeah, so your pick is a number 2, Xavier. Let's ask you, Jesse, again. How about a 1 seed? Which 1 seed might be the first to beat?
They're all pretty strong, but I'd say I could see Purdue beating a Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
I could see that.
Jesse, I like that pick. I'm not a Purdue fan. I won't be rooting for it. But those big guys are something to watch. Virginia plays excellent defense, but they don't score very well, and Purdue can guard. I like that pick of Virginia. Daniel, let's go to you. A number 2 or a number 1 you think will we've already Coach Strasser's trying to win the faculty pool here by getting some of our advice, I think.
I could see North Carolina losing to 9 seed Providence.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Dunn, probably 2-way point guards in the NCAA. Ben Teal has emerged as a rising star this season for Providence. That could be some pivotal matchups. I think North Carolina is probably a little Providence is, but 30 and 15. Who knows? It's madness.
That's right. I like all the 1 seeds. I think the 2 seeds are vulnerable a little bit, except for Michigan State. I like Jesse's Xavier. They haven't been playing very well. Oklahoma's been struggling too, although I love Buddy Hield. Someone said this, that a jump shooting team may not go very far, and that Oklahoma's a jump shooting team. So that's something that you might have to research for your brackets, that they might get knocked out somewhere. As for the number 1 seeds, I would hope it's North Carolina when an IU gets them in the Sweet 16, but I think North Carolina's finally discovered how to play and utilize their big guys. If they can hit shots, they might be okay. So we're looking at that. Kansas has always struggled in the tournament. When they've been a favored team, number 1, they got beat by a couple 8s or 9s at some point. They haven't really played well in the tournament time. I can see them maybe stumbling. And what's nice is everyone picks Michigan State and everyone picks Kansas, and I think those guys will go. I think the number 1 seed that everyone will pick to leave early will be Oregon, and I think no one's watched them because they're always on at 11, and you're supposed to go to bed for school and all that stuff. But I think Oregon might surprise people and go a little bit, especially because Duke's not as strong, Baylor's not as strong. I think they're going to get to the Elite 8 at least, and then maybe have a chance to go to the Final Four. Brent over here wants to talk a little bit about Northern Iowa. Yeah, I think Northern Iowa can do some damage from the 11th spot. They had some bad losses early, but they did beat a North Carolina team early in the season. So Daniel, let's just go around one last time here before we wrap up our show, and unless we get some additional questions, but pick a team that you really want to see go far that's not a top team, and explain why.
I would maybe say Stony Brook. They have Jahil Warney, I believe that's his name. I've been off on a couple names. He dropped 43 points in the America East final. He's a real deal. He shot 18 for 22. He grabbed 13 boards. He gets in the post. He maybe gets a couple Kentucky bigs in foul trouble. This is their first dance appearance. Who knows what they can do? The Seawolves, they're a good 3-point shooting team. I watched that game against Vermont. They can really stretch you out. They play well in the pick and roll. They can defend. They defend very well in the half court. I think that they could do some damage if they get past Tyler Ulis.
Very good, Jesse. A team that maybe not a lot of people will be rooting for, but that you'll be rooting for here in the tournament.
I like Texas. I know they're seated pretty high, but I just love Shaka Smart. I just love how he teaches defense, and they have a really good guard in Isaiah Taylor. And guards can take you far in the NCAA tournament. I think they'll be the team to watch.
Yeah, for me, I'm not really rooting for Seton Hall, but I want to watch and see if they can continue their momentum. A few years ago, I was telling my son Brent, UConn went on a 4-5 game. They were like seeded 9th or 10th in the Big East tournament and made on a big run, won the thing, and then proceeded to go into the championship. So you wonder if a team like Seton Hall, who's playing really well, will just continue it for 4 or 5 or 6 games. A lot of upset picks around. I don't mind Bob Huggins. I like Stephen F. Austin. I think they deserve a chance. That's a really incredibly high seed right there. I think I'm with Texas as well. And, I'd like to see some of these teams in the play-in games trying to win a game or two. Maybe not Tulsa because they got in, but I'd like to see Syracuse get beat. But other than that, okay, those are kind of our Cinderella picks. Let's do this. We got a couple really great questions. We'll go back. Let's talk Coach Strasser's Cinderella picks, a team that you think might win it all that no one is expecting to pick. Daniel, you're first.
I think it could be St. Joseph's. They defend very well. They have veteran players. They're probably one of the hottest teams in the country right now. We were pretty skeptical on them early in this season because they didn't really get into the meat of their schedule. But now that I've seen them play a couple times, they're pretty solid, and they're a pretty good jump shooting team. Another team that I think could make a deep tourney run is Iona. AJ English is one of the top mid-major players. They shoot a lot of threes. They don't play a lot of defense, but they look to outscore you. And I think that if you don't defend that, they can be a very dangerous team.
Jesse, what a team that you think has a legitimate shot to win it, but no one's really calling for them to win it?
I know they're in the death or like the hardest bracket that people were talking about, but I'd have to go with UConn. I watched their 4 OT game, and wow, they have some grit. I know they'd have to play Kansas if they do win that game, but I feel like they could actually go really far.
Yeah, I mentioned Seton Hall, and simply a Cinderella pick because they won the Big East tournament and they're playing really well. And that Isaiah Whitehead, is a player. He is thick. He can jump. He can shoot. He can get the ball to the rack. I really like Seton Hall for an outside chance. And a sleeper, Conzo Martin, former Boilermaker, hard to say it, wearing all the IU stuff in the Cream and Crimson Man Cave. I think the guy can coach, and I really do. And California's got some players, and no one thinks they're going to get out. And maybe they pull an upset over a Kansas in the Sweet 16. Those are, a 4 seed. The Pac-12, Daniel said it earlier, I think the Pac-12. So I guess those would be our Cinderella picks at first glance. B. Ritt down there, my son says any 15 seeds have a chance. I say Cal State Bakersfield, maybe simply if Oklahoma has already lost their jump shots and kind of are looking ahead. That might be the only one. Jesse, do you see any 15 seeds having a chance?
Not really. I'd have to agree with you.
Daniel?
No, I think all the 2 seeds are safe sailing.
Yeah, let's wrap up our discussion tonight with this. It's first of all, I'd like to thank Daniel and Jesse and the other members of our committee for just an outstanding 2 months of basketball, and especially the last 2 weeks when we put our bracket together. We were winners before they graded our bracket, and we were winners because it is just great to be around you guys, you young men, to help you as we can, and you guys help us old guys as well stay young, and it's nice to see you at basketball games, and so a thanks goes out. Daniel has been published, StudentUnionSports.com. He's been published, and these broadcasts, these audio broadcasts, go on their iTunes podcast. So just a big thank you. We're getting a lot of notoriety right now, and some articles and some things are happening for us because we happen to score well. But I think our group is a winner, even if we would have been last in the bracket matrix. And I mean, the guys and to our listeners, it has been a fun ride. Now we just get to watch games in the best 3 weeks if you're a fan. But the nice thing about our group is they're all juniors, so we have 6 returning. we're already scouting and people are sending in names of 8th graders who might want to be part of our group. This is just a fantastic time. So I'm going to go to my partners here for just a closing comment, and then I'll wrap it up. Let's go with you, Jesse. Any final comments?
Oh, yeah, it's been a blast. I'm glad Daniel wanted me to join and invited me with open arms.
You're so very welcome. We're looking forward to a football season with you next year and a lot of good times. Daniel, final thoughts, bud?
I think Shelby Mass said it best in his comments on our article in JNC. It's kind of like Mall Santa. You're around for a couple months and then you're gone for a while. And I think that's what's best, though, is that we really don't go anywhere. We're always here. We're always talking to each other. We see each other at school. And I think that's one of the best things about this is that we're always in communication. And it's just so fun to get to see you guys outside of school and not teaching, and some of us just being able to see each other outside of sports. Yep. So I think it's a lot of fun to be able to do this.
And, we are like the Mall Santa, like Daniel said and Shelby said. We're going to be gone now. No one's going to care about our brackets and what goes on. But it's the best 3 weeks in basketball. And then this group will stay together. We'll maybe do some more of these talks about baseball or something that's going on in the spring, summer, stay in touch. And then we'll hit this back up really hard when we go to football again, and maybe look to expand our coverage on studentunionsports.com. We really appreciate them. If you're interested in following us, it's at Delphi Brackets. Follow us now. You'll be ready for next basketball season. If you want to know how we picked and some of our information and who we are, delphibracketology.weebly.com. We'd love to see you. We've had over 1,000 hits today because of our results. We're thankful for everyone who's asking about us and checking out. This has been an amazing 2 or 3 weeks of bracketing. So, again, thanks to our listeners. Thanks to everyone. We really appreciate all that you do. Happy hoops watching. This is Delphi Bracketology, and we are signing off with a little more Benji Manji. We think he's pretty good. He's from the Free Music Archives. Never met the guy. Got to give him some credit. We're working on our own music. Until then, everyone, may your March be mad.